Go, starting the stream. Gonna refresh Joe Hill's TSD. Load the YouTube. Chat up real nice. Everyone sings jingle bells, don't slip on the ice. It's Christmas Eve around the world today. We're gonna read Christmas Carol Staves. Gonna read Stave 4 first, followed by Stave 5. Hanging out on a server, so's Etho and Wells Night. Welcome Pepper Basenji, the Bog the Frog, good evening. We've also got Salem here, and I made a windmill. The windmill's not very impressive. I've been trying to learn the create mod during the day-to-day because I was just like, it's Christmas Eve. I'm too tired to edit. So I went mining and I gathered a whole bunch of chromatic iron. And people had told me last night, like, Joe, you need to feed the chromatic iron into a grinder or a crusher or something. So I learned how to do that. I haven't been able to figure out yet how to make a baking machine in, what do you call this mod? Oh boy, in create mod. But I think while we give everybody a chance to roll in for a Christmas Carol. Okay, when I was looking at the instructions, it looks like I'm supposed to take some of these and make casings by hitting them with andesite alloy. Boom. So we now have 7 casings. Oh, bring me andesite casings. Uh-oh, we lost one. Magnet on. 7 andesite casings. Now, I think we can go build a fan. And then we will start reading A Christmas Carol, kind of once we've got this all going. We need to give everybody a chance to roll in here. So, what do you call this? This is called a fan. An encased fan. So we need a shaft and a propeller. Oh no, we need iron sheets. Ooh, we don't have a mechanical press. Mechanical press. There is one now. What do we need? Iron anyhow. I gathered some here. Also some shafts. We'll grab this stuff on Hermitcraft. Vault Hunters, we're building this today. Gonna also need depots. Okay. Gonna need some andesite. Gonna grab that right there. And then also chromatic iron. So that makes the andesite alloy. So to make another depot, well, I mean our first depot. Here we go. Depot. So now we can take this over to our big fancy windmill here. And what if we just pick one of these shafts and extend it, right? Like this one. Let's just extend this shaft here. And then have it smash into a mechanical press. It feels like that should be pressing somehow. But maybe it's because we don't have the depot below it yet. And then, what do we put on there to make the... To make the golden plate or sheet, we need to put ingots on top of there. So we need to make an iron plate. Let's turn off our magnet. And then spider climb onto that. Well, that wasn't good. Why isn't spider climb working? Unclear. Hey, look at that. It's pressing. Bonk. What does that do? Create some sheets in a mechanical press. Yay. How do I retrieve that? Oh, wait. Can I put them all down and have them process all at once? That was effective. Okay, let's try turning the magnet back on. Yay, okay. What was it I needed these for? I feel like it was very important. At the time, it seemed important. Mechanical saw, elevator pulley, make super glue, and girders it seems, mechanical plow, redstone contact, empty blaze burner, propellers where it's at. That was what we wanted to encase. Making this fan, putting it away. Okay, so I'm realizing we might need to, I don't know, have this go somewhere or do something. Hey, I'm glad you like your rare Joe Hills and TFC cards, Iconic Anemone. Jackie the Wisp said, yesterday you say 8:30 or 9:30, because I thought you said 8. Yeah, 8:30 is when we all show up for the Christmas Carol, but we don't actually start reading until about 10 minutes in, so people have a chance to get the stream alerts. So we're kind of, the other days I was like greeting our guests before the stream started, but since it's just me today for Christmas Eve, I am kind of working on some Create Mod stuff until we start reading. Don't worry, we are going to be reading A Christmas Carol in Prose, being a ghost story of Christmas by Charles Dickens. That is definitely on the list for today. So, but in the meantime, though, uh-oh, that's not how we want that to go. We want this to go, well, ooh. How does this encased fan work? Does it need to be fed power from the back? Yeah, okay. That's kind of what I assumed. So we might need to build a little bit of a platform here. And then just actually encase the fan up here. Okay. I'm going to add this to our... Ooh. Okay, so now what we should be able to do is to make a thing here that we can put lava in. And then we can put other stuff over here. And the lava will, like, feed heat into it. This sounds crazy, but give me a second. Okay, so there's lava over there if we go that way. There's probably lava if we go down this thing, though. Got this big shaft I dug. Yeah, that cold snap does not give us quite the damage reduction that we were getting before. But, okay, yeah, there's lava. So let's go ahead and grab these 2 buckets. Is there only 1 lava source block there? Ah, well, here's another one here. So now we got 2. Okay, I set up an elevator here earlier, which I failed to use on the way down. But it is pretty nice. Whoops. For getting back up here. Yeah, we're at 8:30 Central Time. Jackie the Wisp. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. We're not on Eastern Time here. And we're going to start reading A Christmas Carol in Prose in about 5 minutes. We're just killing some time, giving the stream alerts a chance to get everybody in who wants to watch. Okay, so I believe I can put that there. And, whoa! What? There was a hole there. I'm not sure how that bit is supposed to work. Will it blow the heat through, like, a fence or something? If I fence this in better? Yeah, see, the heat is not coming through. But yeah, see, then the lava is spreading out there. Maybe I could use, like, a windmill sail or something, and it'll stop the lava, still allow the heat. Yeah, now the heat's still going past. Okay. Cool. So, let's go ahead now and go grab some stuff to smelt. In theory, this should cook that other stuff faster. I've never used this method before, though, so I don't actually know. So we're going to grab a bunch of this out of here. Ow. So apparently I catch fire if I'm near that. So don't stand directly in the flame is one of the lessons here. Okay. So we're going to toss that there. Oh, we got to turn the magnet off. We're going to toss this stack of chromatic dust. And in theory, that should cook it. In theory. Maybe we'll extend that a little bit there. It's a learning process. Okay. Well, like I said, we're starting in about 3 minutes, reading Staves 4 and 5 of A Christmas Carol in Prose, Being a Ghost Story of Christmas by Charles Dickens. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. I am not going to be acknowledging the tips in the middle of the, what do you call it? In the middle of, like, a chapter, or, like, well, I mean, I'm not going to break up the middle of a line, probably, basically. But, yeah, okay, so it looks like what you're supposed to be able to do is bulk blast, smoke, or wash things. But it doesn't have, like, a timeline for how long it'll take. Are these cooking? Or the question is, too, are they blown too far away? Do I need to, like, block them in? Okay. So it looks like if we put them right here. Let's go ahead and toss these in there. Maybe they just take a while. Maybe chromatic iron just takes a while, but also maybe they were out of range by the end there. We don't know yet. Yeah, I won't stop in the middle of the line unless there's an amazing joke in the chat that I start laughing at so hard I can't do anything. Yeah, they have particles coming out, so it looks like something is happening. Hey, yeah, I think last time they just got too far out of range. Yeah, y'all were right. Okay, so let's just throw them all in, I guess. Oops. Hopefully that works. It seems like this is faster than using the funnel thing, at least. I'll tell you that. Now, the question is, will they all cook at once, or... Janky says, I think it's affected by the fan's input speed. The mod says no. The mod says the fan's input speed affects the distance that the heat travels, but not the rate at which things cook. Okay, so it looks like they are all cooking. I think that might be them all cooked now. Magnet back on. Okay, so it looks like 2 stacks didn't cook. Magnet off. Magnet switched off. Doo-doo-doo-dee. Yeah, this is way quicker than using the blast furnace. It's not instant by any means, but it's considering that we just did something like, this is 4 stacks here and another 3 stacks. We just did 7 stacks at once, which we would have been waiting a while for over here. I'm going to go pull the rest of this stuff out of the blast furnace, because why bother at this point? Wow, how much was left in here? Time is calculated per item. Stacks seem slower because they wait for the whole stack to finish. Interesting. Yeah, so I definitely catch fire if I walk into that. So let's try not to catch fire. Could you automate this with the item falling through a cobweb? Yeah, there's like conveyor belts and stuff. We're just... The problem is all the stuff I want to build in this mod pack requires a ton of chromatic iron, because it's like each of those casing blocks is 9 chromatic iron in the Vault Hunters mod pack. So basically, we're kind of trying to bootstrap at this point. So we need to get enough blocks to actually build out all the more automated parts of this. So magnet off. And then we're going to toss that. And as soon as we're done with this smelting bit, we're going to go grab everything and head over and do our Christmas Carol, because we are past 8:45 now. Adding an emergency puddle nearby would be very smart, Casey Squared. You're not wrong. Create mod scares me with all the nested crafting. Yeah, you need to unlock a lot of things to unlock the other things. It is a lot, yeah. Okay, I think that was all of it. So magnet back on. Yep. So now we've got, what is this, 16 stacks, 4 256s of chromatic iron ingots. So we should have enough now to make a bunch of these cases that we're going to need. These cases are used in making gantry carriages, mechanical rollers, deployers. Each of these cases is 9 chromatic iron. Making andesite doors, mechanical saws, contraption controls, gear shifts, mechanical pistons, analog levers, portable storage interfaces, item vaults. Item vaults might be good to build. Let's press W to ponder item vaults real quick. Item vaults can be used to store large amounts of items. However, contents cannot be added or taken manually. Oh, that sucks. Okay. So we probably don't want to deal with that. Dimensions of an item vault. They can be combined to increase total capacity. Yeah, we're not going to deal with this, I don't think. Yeah, create mod takes 6 research points to unlock, so I think I'm the first one to actually do it. Okay. How do you take items out if they can't be taken manually? There's, like, extractor items with conveyor belts and stuff. So, like, I can't manually access the inventory, but I could have, like, filters and sorters and stuff pulling things out of it, is basically how it would work. Okay. So, I think we should go ahead and turn night into day, and then we're going to go get set up in our Christmas village for a Christmas Carol in prose, because we've just completed that little bit there. Create mod's a lot of fun, though. I've been having a lot of fun with this today. No guests tonight, it's just me. It's Christmas Eve, so most people have other plans. My family would normally be doing stuff on Christmas Eve, but 2 of my siblings have newborns, and so they were both like, well, our families don't want to travel, but we also don't want you coming to us because newborns. And, so it's hard to have a newborn and have a bunch of people like staying at your house at the same time, So, really, is this guy. Was he waiting for the lightning to end? Interesting. So he knew not to run toward me when the storm cloud was there. That's cool. I do have to wrap gifts tonight. But yeah, basically, since two of my siblings just have newborns, they were like, yeah, we don't want to travel or host for Christmas this year. And so my parents were like, let's just not really do anything. So it's like, fine, that's cool. So yeah, I've kind of got an off year. Probably next year we'll be doing more family Christmas stuff again, and then I'll go back to. It used to be I'd do this Christmas Carol thing like the week before Christmas, not necessarily like the night before Christmas. So, anyway, here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and post a link to Project Gutenberg, Stave 4 of A Christmas Carol, and I'm gonna post the tipping link one more time. We're gonna rotate the camera 1 degree angular for each dollar that rolls in. We are currently at 0 degrees angular. So, here we go. Stave 4, the last of the spirits. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this, it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was shrouded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not yet happened, but will happen in the time before us, Scrooge pursued. Is that so, spirit? The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition, and given him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any specter I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I'm prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge. "Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come toward him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them and encompass them of its own act. But there they were, in the heart of it, on change amongst the merchants, who hurried up and down, and chinked the money in their pockets, and conversed in groups, and looked at their watches, and trifled thoughtfully with their great gold seals, and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin. "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "Oh, when did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "Why, what was the matter with him?" asked a third, taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a very large snuff box. "I thought he'd never die." "God knows," said the first, with a yawn. "Oh, what has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman, with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose that shook like the gills of a turkey-cock. "I haven't heard," said the man with a large chin, yawning again. "Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know." This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for, upon my life, I don't know anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer?" "I don't mind going if a lunch is provided," observed the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose. "But I must be fed if I make one." Another laugh. "Well, I am the most disinterested among you, after all," said the first speaker, "for I never wear black gloves, and I never eat lunch. But I will offer to go if anybody else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye." Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with other groups. Scrooge knew the men and looked toward the spirit for an explanation. The phantom glided into a street. Its finger pointed to two persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie here. He knew these men also perfectly. They were men of business, very wealthy, and of great importance. He had made a point always of standing well in their esteem, in a business point of view, that is, strictly in a business point of view. "How are you?" said one. "How are you?" returned the other. "Well," said the first, "Old Scratch has got his own at last, hey?" "So I am told," returned the second. "Cold, isn't it?" "Seasonable for Christmas time. You're not a skater, I suppose?" "No, no, no. Something else to think of. Good morning." Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversations apparently so trivial. But, feeling assured they must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. They could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost's province was the future. Nor could he think of anyone immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But, nothing doubting that to whomsoever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement, he resolved to treasure up every word he heard, and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared. For he had an expectation that the conduct of his future self would give him the clue he missed, and render the solution of these riddles easy. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind a change of life, and thought and hoped he saw his new-born resolutions carried out in this. Quiet and dark, beside him stood the phantom with its outstretched hand. When he roused himself from this thoughtful quest, he fancied from the turn of the hand and its situation in reference to himself that the unseen eyes were looking at him keenly. It made him shudder and feel very cold. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town, where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half-naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offenses of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth, and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed beetling shop below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, and refuse iron of all kinds. Secrets that few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and sepulchres of bones. Sittin' in among the wares he dealt in, by a charcoal stove made of old bricks, was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air without by a frowsy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters hung upon a line, and smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black, who was no less startled by the sight of them than they had been upon the recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment, in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Oh, let the charwoman alone to be the first," cried she who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance, if we haven't all three met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," said old Joe, removing the pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlor. You were made free of it long ago, you know. And the other two ain't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Ugh, how it squeaks. There ain't such a rusty bit of metal in its place as in its own hinges, I believe. And I'm sure there's no such old bones and hair as mine. We're all suitable to our calling. We're all well matched. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor." The parlor was the space behind the screen of rags. The old man raked the fire together with an old stair rod, and, having trimmed his smoky lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, put it in his mouth again. While he did this, the woman who had already spoken threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees and looking with a bold defiance at the other two. "What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber?" said the woman. "Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did." "Oh, that's true indeed," said the laundress. "No man more so." "Why, then, don't stand staring as if you are afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber and the man together. "We should hope not." "Very well, then," cried the woman. "That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose." "Oh, no, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber, laughing. "If he wanted to keep them after he was dead, a wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of laying gasping out his last there, alone, by himself." "It's the truest word that ever was spoke," said Mrs. Dilber. "It's a judgment on him." I wish it was just a little heavier judgment, and it should have been, you may depend upon it, if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them to see it. We know pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe. But the gallantry of her friends would not allow of this, and the man in faded black, mounting the breach first, produced his plunder. It was not extensive. A seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. They were severally examined and appraised by old Joe, who chalked the sums he was disposed to give for each upon the wall, and added them up into a total. When he found there was nothing more to come, "That's your account," said Joe. "And I wouldn't give another sixpence if I was to be boiled for not doing it. Who's next?" Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall in a similar manner. "I always give too much to ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I ruin myself," said old Joe. "That's your account. If you asked me for another penny and made it an open question, I'd repent of being so liberal and knock off half a crown." "And now undo my bundle, Joe," said the first woman. Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it, and having unfastened a great many knots, dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff. "What do you call this? Bed curtains?" "Oh," returned the woman, laughing and leaning forward on her crossed arms. "Bed curtains!" "You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there?" "Yes, I do," replied the woman. "Why not?" "You were born to make your fortune, and you'll certainly do it." "I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can get anything in it by reaching out, for the sake of such a man as he was, I promise you, Joe," returned the woman coolly. "Don't drop that oil upon the blankets now."
"His blankets?"
"Whose else do you think? He isn't likely to take cold without 'em, I dare say."
"I hope he didn't die of anything catching,
said old Joe, stopping in his work and looking up. "Don't you be afraid of that. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about him for such things if he did. Huh? You may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me."
What do you call a wasting of it?"
"Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure." "Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it ain't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look uglier than he did in that one." Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. As they sat grouped about their spoil, in the scanty light afforded by the old man's lamp, he viewed them with detestation and disgust, which could hardly have been greater, though they had been obscene demons, marketing the corpse itself. Laughed the same woman, when old Joe, producing a flannel bag with money in it, took out their several gains upon the ground.
This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive. To profit us when he was dead. Spirit,
said Scrooge, shuddering from head to foot.
I see. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven. What is this?
He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced round it in obedience to a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced toward the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it, the motion of a finger upon Scrooge's part, would have disclosed the face. He thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it, but had no more power to withdraw the veil than to dismiss the spectre at his side. Oh, cold, cold, rigid, dreadful death, set up thine altar here, and dress it with such terrors as thou hast at thy command, for this is thy dominion. But of the loved, revered, and honored head, thou canst not turn one hair to thy dread purposes, or make one feature odious. It is not that the hand is heavy and will fall down when released. It is not that the heart and the pulse are still, but that the hand was open, generous, and true, the heart warm, brave, and tender, and the pulse a man's. Strike, shadow, strike, and see his good deeds springing from the wound to sow the world with life immortal. No voice pronounced these words in Scrooge's ears, and yet he heard them when he looked upon the bed. He thought, if this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts. Avarice, hard dealings, griping cares, they have brought him to a rich end, truly. He lay in the dark, empty house, with not a man, a woman, or a child to say that he was kind to me in this or that, and for the memory of one kind word, I will be kind to him. A cat was tearing at the door, and there was a sound of gnawing rats beneath the hearthstone. What they wanted in the room of death, and why they were so restless and disturbed, Scrooge did not dare to think.
Spirit, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go.
Still, the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head.
I understand you, and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power. Spirit, I have not the power.
Again, it seemed to look upon him.
If there is any person in the town who feels emotions caused by this man's death,
said Scrooge, quite agonized,
show that person to me. Spirit, I beseech you.
The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment, like a wing, and, withdrawing it, revealed a room by daylight, where a mother and her children were. She was expecting someone, and with an anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, started at every sound, looked out from the window, glanced at the clock, tried, but in vain, to work with her needle, and could barely hear the voices of the children in their play. At length, the long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. There was a remarkable expression in it now, a kind of serious delight, of which he felt ashamed, and which he struggled to repress. He sat down to the dinner that had been hoarding for him by the fire, and when she asked him faintly, "What news?" which was not until after a long silence, he appeared embarrassed how to answer. "Is it good or bad?" she said to help him. "Bad," he answered. "We are quite ruined?" "No. There is hope yet, Caroline." "If he relents," she said, amazed, "there is. Nothing is past hope if such a miracle has happened." "He is past relenting," said her husband. He is dead." She was a mild and patient creature, if her face spoke truth. but she was thankful in her soul to hear it, and she said so with clasped hands. She prayed forgiveness the next moment, and was sorry. But the first was the emotion of the heart. What the half-drunken woman whom I told you of last night said to me when I tried to see him and obtain a week's delay, and what I thought was merely an excuse to avoid me, turns out to have been quite true. He was not only very ill, but dying then. To whom will our debt be transferred? I don't know. But before that time, we shall be ready with the money. And even though we were not, it would be a bad fortune indeed to find so merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline. Yes, soften it as they would. Their hearts were lighter. The children's faces hushed and clustered round to hear what they so little understood were brighter. And it was a happier house for this man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show him, caused by the event, was one of pleasure.
Let me see some tenderness connected with a death, said Scrooge. Or that dark chamber, spirit, which we left just now. It'll be forever present to me.
The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but was nowhere to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire. Quiet. Very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were all still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet.
And he took a child and set him in the midst of them.
Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out, as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. But why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. The color hurts my eyes, she said. The color. Ah, poor Tiny Tim. They're better now, again, said Cratchit's wife. It makes him weak by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time. Past it, rather, Peter answered, shutting up his book. But I think he has walked a little slower than he used these past few evenings, Mother. They were very quiet again. At last she said, and in a steady, cheerful voice that only faltered once, I have known him to walk with, I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim, very fast indeed upon his shoulder.
And so have I, cried Peter. Often.
And so have I, exclaimed another. So had all. But he was so very light to carry, she resumed, intent upon her work, and his father loved him so, and it was no trouble, no trouble. And there is your father, at the door. She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob and his comforter, for he had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits got up upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, father, don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them, and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table, and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. "Sunday! You went today then, Robert," said his wife.
Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child, cried Bob. My little child.
He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. He left the room and went upstairs to the room above, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There was a chair set close beside the child, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little and composed himself, he kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened, and went down again, quite happy. They drew about the fire and talked, the girls and mother working still. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day, and seeing that he looked just a little down, you know, inquired what had happened to distress him.
On which, said Bob, for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman you have heard, I told him, I am heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit.
I am heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit,
he said,
and heartily sorry for your good wife.
By the by, how he ever knew that, I don't know.
Know what, my dear?
Why, that you're a good wife,
replied Bob.
Everybody knows that,
said Peter.
Very well observed, my boy. I hope they do.
Heartily sorry,
he said,
for your good wife, if I can be of service of you or to you in any way.
He said, giving me his card.
That's where I live. Pray, come to me.
No, it wasn't,
cried Bob.
For the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way. This was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us.
I'm sure he's a good soul, said Mrs. Cratchit.
You wouldn't be sure of it, my dear, if you saw and spoke to him, I shouldn't be at all surprised, mark what I say, if he got Peter a better situation.
Only hear that, Peter, said Mrs. Cratchit. And then, cried one of the girls, Peter will be keeping company with someone and setting up for himself. Get along with you, retorted Peter, grinning.
It's just as likely as not, said Bob. One of these days, though. There's plenty of time for that, my dear. But however and whenever we part from one another, I am sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting that was among us.
Never, father, cried they all.
And I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily among ourselves, and forget poor little Tiny Tim in doing it.
No, never, father, they all cried again. Mrs. Cratchit kissed him, and his daughters kissed him. The two young Cratchits kissed him, and then Peter and himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God.
Spectre, said Scrooge. Something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me, what man was that whom we saw lying dead?
The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him as before, though at a different time, he thought. Indeed, there seemed no order in the latter visions, save that they were in the future, into the resorts of businessman, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on, as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment.
This court, said Scrooge, through which we hurry now is where my place of occupation is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in days to come.
The spirit stopped. The hand was pointed elsewhere.
The house is yonder. Why do you point away?
The inexorable finger underwent no change. Scrooge hastened to the window of his office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed, as before. Scrooge joined it once again, and, wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused to look round before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite. A worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge advanced toward it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw new meaning in its solemn shape.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me just one question. Are these shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only?
Still, the ghost pointed downward, to the grave by which it stood.
Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say, it is thus. With that, what you show me,
The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept toward it, trembling as he went, and following the finger read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge.
am I that man who lay upon the bed?
He cried upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again.
No! Spirit, no, no!
The finger was still there.
Spirit!
He cried, tight, clutching at its robe.
Hear me! I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, but for this intercourse. Why, show me this, if I am all past hope.
For the first time, the hand appeared to shake.
Good spirit,
He pursued. As down upon the ground he fell before it.
your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life.
The kind hand trembled.
I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
In agony, he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but Scrooge was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Thus concludes Stave 4 of A Christmas Carol in Prose, being a ghost story of Christmas by Charles Dickens. Whew. Did that all in one go. We've got Stave 5 coming up next, entitled The End of It. But before we do, we had some pretty good questions and comments in the chat. The stream is not over. We're doing 2 staves tonight, because Stave 4 and 5 are the 2 shortest ones. We're doing both of them all in one night. But we had a question in chat asking, why does Scrooge get this, but Marley doesn't? And I will say, Marley actually explicitly says on the first night that he had interceded for Scrooge. remember when we saw all the ghosts in Stave 1 watching all the wretched people that they could have helped in life, wishing that they could help them now? Their punishment for being selfish all their lives was seeing how much they could have done and wanting to be able to do it. And it's only after 7 years of Marley being punished in this way that he is granted an opportunity to actually intercede and help Scrooge. And so it's implied that this is some sort of purgatorial, not completely hellish situation where these spirits are, hopefully one day going to be able to see what their lives would have been like if they had been able to help people and be free of that burden of that selfishness. And so the reason Marley turned out the way he did was arguably that Marley didn't have anyone who was as good a friend to him as he was to Scrooge. But Scrooge, by accepting this help and following through and meeting with the spirits, is also helping Marley back. So I'd like to think that this is a happy ending for both. Jinky Reefs asks, was Marley eternally doomed, or would this good act of intervention shave time off his sentence? Well, so the thing is, the sentence was to witness the suffering of others and be unable to help them. And so this is an erasure of the sentence. This is breaking the sentence, in my opinion. But yeah. So you gotta be the Marley you want to see in the world, I guess, is kind of part of this. We have a tip rolling in. Like I said, I'm not acknowledging the tips as soon as they come in because we're in the middle of reading A Christmas Carol. But now that we're between two staves, thank you very much to Manu Smith, MPT3K, for tipping 20, who writes, Happy Holidays, Joe. Well, thank you, Manu. I hope that you are having a fantastic Christmas Eve as well. Merry Christmas to you and your fantastic wife and children. We're going to rotate the camera 20 degrees angular, 1 degree for every dollar that you just tipped. If anybody else would like to tip, tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. If you would like to read along, we are about to start Stave 5, the end of it. Like I said, Staves 4 and 5 are the two shortest. So I usually do this over the course of 4 nights. And tonight being Christmas Eve is the 4th. And I'm really glad that this is something that we can do every year together. Kind of just a fun way to spend a little bit of holiday season together. And yeah. So thank you again, MPT3K, who's posting hearts in the Twitch chat. Yeah, it's been so fun hanging out with you, Manu, on your streams the last few years. It's nice to see you here in mine. And just so you guys know, I will be joining Manu on his birthday stream in early January. We'll be reading him after one of my early January Friday night streams for a birthday Riff Theater. I don't remember if he had picked the movie yet for that night, but it should be a good time. So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and... How much? Okay, so I got some... Between staves, because I don't want to do this while we're in the middle of a stave. I've actually got a small sidebar here. My parents got me a bottle of whiskey for Christmas. I don't know if you can see this. It might be too close to the camera to fit the entire bottle in frame. But yeah, my parents got me a big bottle of Jack Daniels for Christmas when they came by the other day. We spent yesterday together. We went and saw It's a Wonderful Life at the Belcourt Theater, which is Nashville's nonprofit movie theater. And then we went out for a late lunch, early dinner. Because, like, the movie got out at around 2 o'clock. And so we kind of did, like, I guess it would be a late lunch, really. And then we went and played pinball. It was a lot of fun getting to hang out with them yesterday. I've got plans with other family tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. But, yeah. So, yeah, they dropped off this... What is this? Okay, it's definitely... there's got to be somewhere on here that says how big this bottle is. I feel like this is 750... It's 1.75 liters. This is practically a 2-liter bottle of whiskey. It's 7/8 of a 2-liter bottle of whiskey. So thanks, Mom and Dad. So yeah, mixing that with some Sundrop. Okay, let's go. Oh yeah, the world download went out today on hermitcraft.com. Before we jump into Stave 5, I should mention that if y'all want to download the world download, that is live now. Janky Reef says, by the way, Joe, your pinball machine was the first place I visited in the world download today. It was cool to see it myself after seeing you work on it in so many streams. Dave Hensel says that's a half gallon, also known as a handle of whiskey. Oh, okay. Well, it's enough that I don't feel bad about pouring myself a second glass. It is Christmas Eve after all. So, yeah. Okay. So like I said, Stave 5, the end of it. NJ Coffee Junkie says that her husband Manatee Gag went through the world download, and NJ's hoping to have time to do so on Tuesday. Oh, awesome. Have fun. Jackie says, I'm on the world download right now. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I really hope that y'all get the chance to visit the TFC Mineshaft. Like I said, that wasn't something we knew how to share with y'all in video form, because all of our videos are supposed to be exciting and attention grabbing, and you know, we wanted to take some time together to remember and honor TFC, but that wasn't something we could really share at the audience with our existing skill set, you know? So the fact that y'all can download the world now and visit the mine on your own, I feel like it's a really fitting tribute to our friend. And I'm of all the parts of the world download that I'm most glad to be able to share with y'all, it's that. I mean, I'm proud of my base, and I'm happy that y'all will get to fly around and visit it and stuff. But yeah, Tinfoil Chef was a fantastic member of the team for a long time, and yeah, I really hope that y'all who are exploring the world download do take a minute to check that out yourself. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but you know, it's not intended to be. It's a memorial, you know. So sorry. But yeah. Mantigag, so some of y'all went hard with the digging. A few of your tunnels go on for ages. Honestly, yeah, the underneath parts of the Hermitcraft server are just as impressive as the above ground parts. But yeah. Well, Dave, congratulations on being sober for 2 years and 7 months. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, like that's a struggle, and I'm glad you're able to do that. Manatee Gag says, "Did you write the poem on the signs? The ones in the TFC memorial? I definitely wrote some signs down there. But I don't know if I'm the only one who wrote signs down there that could be construed as a poem. So I don't want to claim that the ones you saw were definitely me. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people expressed their grief and their appreciation for TFC in their own ways. I definitely did write signs down there, but I can't claim that I wrote all the signs down there. Because we also didn't really, like, we weren't looking over each other's shoulder at what each other were doing. So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're going to lay our heads down and dream once the sun sets here, and then we will start with Stave 5. Thank y'all for enjoying this little intermission with me between Staves 4 and 5. Janky Reese says, I just started watching TFC's videos. They're very chill, and I certainly enjoy them. Aurora Shard says, TFC's mind was so moving. My friend and I explored it today. Yeah, I feel like that's the way that it's meant to be experienced, is, you know, by yourself or with a friend or two, not you know, we recorded ourselves building that because we weren't sure if it was going to be productive for the community if we shared it, like, you know, because we knew that TFC's audience was grieving. But when your job is to make exciting shows and you only know how to edit exciting shows that are like, oh, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, like, you don't want to do that about your friend's death, you know what I mean? And so we all kind of basically decided to sit on the footage until the end of the season. I don't know if anybody's going to publish any of it now. I haven't gone back and looked at mine yet. But it kind of just felt better to do something quietly. Cuz like, you know, the way the YouTube algorithm works, if one of us just made like a really baller memorial video, then all of a sudden that channel is going to get a huge traffic spike and then you're making more money, and it's like you don't want to do something like that for those reasons. And so it's kind of one of those things like, is there a way that we could make a good memorial video without getting algorithmic benefits? And there isn't. So we kind of just didn't because it felt wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah. As far as it goes, says TFC always did his own thing. I don't think he would have wanted to make a big fuss about his passing. Yeah, there's a great bit in his obituary about how, like, at one point he like wandered off and like his family didn't see him for 16 years until they like just randomly like ran into him delivering pizzas in like some other city. Like, he's just out there living his own life, just doing his own thing. Like, I might have the years wrong on that, but like it might not have been 16, but it was like a while. Like the guy did what he wanted, you know. Fazu the Battlecaster says, "Can you not turn monetization off for that video?" You can, but the algorithm will still weigh it. It's weird. The whole thing is weird. Like, it just like YouTube is not a good place to memorialize your friend. Is kind of the conclusion we drew. But unfortunately, YouTube is how we communicate with most people, and so it was just, I don't know. But yeah, I'm really glad that TFC's audience will have the opportunity to visit the mines and see the memorial and what we built, and yeah, that I think is the most important part of the world download. Because I mean, there's a lot of great stuff there. Scarland decked out. I'm proud of my machine, my pinball machine. I'm like Clio and Cubs museums are amazing. There's a lot of great stuff, but yeah, I do want to encourage everybody to kind of stop by TFC's memorial. You know, just quietly, you know, on your own time. But okay, we are almost at 10 o'clock, so I think it is time to start Stave 5. Okay. Stave 5. The end of it. Yes. And the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in.
I will live in the past, the present, and the future,
Scrooge repeated as he scrambled out of bed.
The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Ah, Jacob Marley, heaven, and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees.
He was so fluttered and so glowing with good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face was wet with tears.
"They are not torn down!"
cried Scrooge, folding one of his bed curtains in his arms.
"They are not torn down, rings and all. They're here. I am here. The shadows of things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know it. I know they will."
His hands were busy with his garments all this time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance.
"I don't know what to do!"
cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect Laocoon of himself with his stockings.
"I'm light as a feather. I am happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hello there. Woo. Hello!"
He had frisked into the sitting room and was now standing there, perfectly winded.
"There's the saucepan that the gruel was in,"
cried Scrooge, starting off again, going around the fireplace.
"There's the door. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas presents sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened."
Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs.
"I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello. Hello there."
He was checked in his transports by the churches, ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer, ding dong, bell, bell, ding dong, hammer, clang, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious.
"What's today?"
cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes who had perhaps loitered in to look about him.
"Eh?"
returned the boy, with all his might of wonder.
"What's today, my fine fellow?"
Today, replied the boy. Why, it's Christmas Day.
"It's Christmas Day,"
said Scrooge to himself.
"I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Why, of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow." "Hello,"
returned the boy.
"Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one, at the corner?"
I should hope I did, replied the lad.
"An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they sold that prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one."
What big of me?
returned the boy. "What a delightful boy. It is a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck."
He's hanging there now.
"Is it?"
said Scrooge.
"Go and buy it."
Walker!
No, I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell them to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you a crown, half a crown."
The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand at a trigger who could have got a shot off half so fast.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's,
Whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh.
He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob will be.
The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, preparing for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there, waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye.
I shall love it, long as I live,
Cried Scrooge, patting it with his hand.
I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Hey, here's the turkey. Hello. Ooh. How are you? Merry Christmas.
It was a turkey. He could have never stood upon his legs. That bird, he would have snapped 'em off short in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax.
Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town, said Scrooge. You must have a cab.
The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down, breathless in his chair again, and chuckled till he cried. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much, and shaving requires attention, even when you don't dance while you're at it. But if he had cut the end of his nose off, he would have put a piece of sticking plaster over it and been quite satisfied. He dressed himself all his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people by this time pouring forth as he had seen them, with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with hands behind them. Scrooge regarded every one with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that a few 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest on his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on toward him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house at the day before and said, "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe." It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met. But he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it.
My dear sir,
said Scrooge, quickening his pace and taking the old gentleman by his hands.
How do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon. And will you have the goodness?
Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me!" cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. "My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?"
If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?
"My dear sir," said the other, shaking hands with him, "I don't know what to say to such magnificent—"
Don't say anything, please. Come and see me. Will you come and see me?
I will, cried the old gentleman, and it was clear he meant to do it.
Thank ye. I'm much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you.
He went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted children on the head and questioned beggars and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps toward his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock. But he made a dash and did it.
Is your master at home, my dear?
Said Scrooge to the girl. Nice girl, very. Yes, sir.
Where is he, my love?
He's in the dining room along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please.
Thank ye, he knows me, said Scrooge with his hand already on the dining room lock. I'll go in here, my dear.
He turned it gently and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array, for these young housekeepers were always nervous on such points, and liked to see that everything is right.
Fred!
Said Scrooge. Dear heart alive, how his niece by marriage started. Scrooge had forgotten, for the moment, about her sitting in the corner with the footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. Why, bless my soul, cried Fred. Who's that?
It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. A quarter past. Dun, 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 dun. No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off, his comforter too. Before he opened the door, he was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to o'ertake 9 o'clock.
Hello,
growled Scrooge, in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it.
What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I am very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
You are,
repeated Scrooge.
Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir. If you please.
It's only once a year, sir,
pleaded Bob, appearing from behind the tank.
It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore,
he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again.
And therefore I am about to raise your salary.
Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling to the people in the court for help and a straight waistcoat.
A Merry Christmas, Bob,
said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken as he clapped him on the back.
A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have ever given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking Bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in them, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset, and knowing that such as those would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes and grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards, and it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed that knowledge. May that truly be said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. And that concludes Stave 5 of A Christmas Carol in Prose, being a ghost story of Christmas by Charles Dickens. Thank you for joining me for these 4 nights reading. Hope y'all had a good time. We had some fantastic guests earlier, and then we wrapped it up here on Christmas Eve solo. There's not a lot of great parts for guests in Stave 4, unlike the other parts. So, Borealis Laura says, a wonderful way to pass a Christmas Eve. Casey Squared says, thank you for reading. Yergi and System Seth in 2 separate chats are having clap emojis. Salem writes, thank you so much for reading this. It's lovely. I hope you have a good holiday. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of fun. So, Pickett2 says, that was fun. Thank you. Nymph also clapping. Noctoroba says, thanks, Joe. Happy Christmas. Jackie the Wisp says, I made it for yesterday and today, honestly. Thank you for having it. Centauratron says, I love Mr. Hardluck's Randy Savage voice for the Ghost of Christmas Present. Nutmeg Soup says, thanks for reading. Merry Christmas. Jackie says, thank you for this, Joe. Happy holidays, everyone. Ejo Studio says, cheers. Merry Christmas. Caitlin says, this has been lovely to listen to while working on last minute presents. Merry Christmas, Joe. Yeah, I was going to say, there's probably a lot of parents who had this on while they're wrapping gifts. Even though my daughter's big present was a trip, I got her a few smaller things. I got her a book and a hat, a shirt, and some trousers. It's like, well, clothes aren't kids' favorite Christmas gift. But you know what? Pittsburgh for a pinball tournament is a decent one. So she can have clothes too and not complain. My fiance actually sent over some makeup for her as well. And then we've got some other gifts from friends and family for her to open tomorrow. So it should be fun. Christmas morning here. I'm excited about that. Dark Witchcraft says, thanks for the story. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, we do this every year. I will say next year, once my fiance hopefully has been, we're doing the immigration visa thing right now. Hopefully we're going to be traveling to see my family some next Christmas. So what we'll probably do is move the Christmas Carol up a week and do it a little bit earlier in the year so we can travel and enjoy some time off together. But yeah, looks like we got a tip rolling in. Let's see who that's from. William says, Merry Christmas. Thanks for all the Minecraft. Thank you very much, William. We're going to go ahead and rotate that camera now 20 degrees angular. Let's go ahead and post that tip and link again. If anybody enjoyed the show, tips are welcome and appreciated. This is a viewer-supported stream, and I appreciate any support y'all want to send my way. Kudji says, thank you for making my birthday feel quite fun. It's a hard day to have your anniversary of orbiting the sun. Hey, Kudji. Feliz cumpleaños a ti. Feliz cumpleaños a ti. Feliz cumpleaños a Kudji and Enrique. Feliz cumpleaños a ti. Y muchos más. Yergi says, clothes may not be the favorite, but there's something to open and nice to have. Well, that's the thing, too, is like, you know, it's one of the, like, so one of the hats is a pinball hat from one of our favorite arcades. One of the shirts is a t-shirt from the place where she did her tournament in Pittsburgh. That was her main Christmas gift. Like, last year, her big Christmas gift and birthday gift combined was going to space camp. But that was, like, in the future. This year it was kind of backwards because the pinball tournament that was her big Christmas gift was a women's pinball tournament, like, December 18th. So we already did that. I wouldn't normally consider going to a pinball tournament a gift to my child, but since it was a women's tournament and I couldn't compete, I felt like, okay, I wouldn't be going all the way to Pittsburgh for this tournament anyway and bringing her along. This is something where we're going out of our way. It's a 9-hour drive for her to get to compete against some of the best women pinball players in the world. And you know what? She did pretty okay for her first big women's out-of-state tournament. So we learned a lot about what it's going to take for her to improve, and that's exciting for her. So Okie dokie Crisco says, thanks for the story, Joe. I spent the last day of exploring the TFC mines. They go on forever and are really striking in spectator mode where you can see all the shafts lit up. And Aurora Shard says, how fun. Yeah. I'm excited about tomorrow. Part of me is like, I don't want to end the stream because I know I need to go wrap presents, and I'm really not good at wrapping presents. But I know my daughter's going to be up early tomorrow. So let's go ahead and post last call for tips. And we'll stick around as long as it takes to smelt all of the copper that I've got in here. Where is it? I've got 862 crushed raw copper from earlier. Let's go ahead and figure out if we can put that in. Yeah, let's go throw this in there, and then we'll wrap up the stream once it's cooked. System Seth says, it was mentioned earlier there was poetry at TFC's mine. I found his mine in his starter house, but no signs. it should be... Oh, wait, this is the... it should be down in the mine. Each of the hermits built their own or dug their own shaft. Not necessarily 100% of us, but most of the hermits, we all got together one day and each extended one shaft and then left something or... Like, I put some signs in the shaft that I claimed, but I don't know what other people did in their shafts. They might have decorated them or modified them in their own way. Ways that were, you know, meaningful to them. But I couldn't tell you, like, which shaft was mine from memory. It was a while ago. Alright, Centauratron, enjoy the film with your family. Alexis said, I hope you enjoyed Pittsburgh. Did you have extra time to explore it all? No, that's one of the things we learned from this trip was we really... Trying to do a trip that's that far away without having extra time factored in for travel and exploration was a mistake. But with the school schedule, we couldn't really do much better. So we might have to save trips that are that far away for like longer weekends. System Chef says I found it. I see it now. Thank you. Oh, awesome. I'm glad. Okay, so that'll take up less space in there at least. Block of copper and ancient copper blocks. Oh, we had some more crushed raw copper I didn't see. We'll probably end up doing more Ohio tournaments. We drove through a lot of the cities in Ohio that have pinball tournaments on our way to Pittsburgh, and they were significantly closer. That was one of the big takeaways was maybe next year, instead of trying to do a big Pittsburgh tournament, we try to do a big Ohio tournament. But yeah. Okay, so while that smelts, I'm going to go ahead and see who's live tonight. Okay, it looks like we have somebody to raid now. Let me make sure they're muted. Okay, so I can now just turn on my magnet, and then that'll pull those right out of there without me catching fire. Because if I go in there, we have learned that that is very hot and not good for my constitution. Okay, so boom. Copper successfully, what do you call it? Copper managed. Also, look at all this chromatic iron we have smelted. That is enough that we are going to be set for making all the casings and things we're going to need for whatever this mod's called in the future. Create mod, yeah. Oh, wow. Look at that. That's a good amount of chromatic iron. Smelt the copper, not the Joe. Exactly. Exactly. So, we are going to be raiding LEJSC this evening, who is streaming some Rush Pinball. Rush is a band from Canada. So, nobody can make fun of me for not knowing. Have I made new tools with Create Mod? I've made new tools with Volterite while I was setting up for the stream earlier. But that's actually how I got all that chromatic iron, because I now have a hammer that can mine like a 5x5 instead of a 3x3. Anyway, when we get over to LEJSC's stream, our raid message is, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Anyway, until next time y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring.